Can I raise some contentious issues here, in terms of the journey, Anu, with your permission? The entire organization structure design that undergoes this particular journey raises some fundamental questions, which I'm possibly leaving it with you, not answering it, but which I'm sure anybody who goes through shared services will possibly encounter. Is HR a destination or a station? When people go through these different silos which automatically gets built in the organization, people do ask these questions. An HR business partner, many a times, a lot of line guys start moving into these roles. The depth of the function starts getting built on the centers of expertise, and the processes in terms of maturities gets built, as he said, in terms of the capabilities, and then the lift and shift into the shared services organization, which is what effectively you do in a three-structure design. Again, there is no classical rule in terms of what it should be, but the best in class typically operates on a 70-10-20, which means in terms of the people that you really distribute across this, 70% of them would be in the shared services organization. If you have fairly high process organization and a highly automated environment, then it works. And you really keep the individual contributors who are really the COEs, and COE, mind you, should not be a spanned organization. And COE and the HR shared services runs into a lot of conflict because COE believes that they are the experts, and the HR shared services believe that if you're going to be relegated to a transaction level organization, which may not be fair, it starts throwing in aspects of casteism within the same organization and function. So is this a three-tiered HR structure where people go up the value chain only this way, number one? Number two, if you were to classically build, and it's a people strong centric and a very strong sponsored event, I'm sure they would have a lot of client environment of this kind. Can you build career tracks within the HR shared services depending on different client needs, number one? And are the skills fungible? So would a shared services guy ever be able to move into a COE? And would a COE ever be able to move into a HR business partner organization? Or is it needed, not needed? What's the architecture? What are the crossover points? How do you really build? And that's the reason I started by saying, is it a destination or is it a station? I think these challenges I've encountered in my long experience of this entire journey, both from a client standpoint, running captive and running large shared services and including end-to-end. So I thought maybe we'd just leave this on the table. I'm not resolving it, obviously not, but just as thoughts. Yeah.
Thanks, Rajesh. I think some very useful thoughts there. Mr. Tripathi, you brought in a very important point, which is about, is HR getting distant? And that is often heard as a reason for resisting this change. I want to talk to somebody, I want to talk to them face to face, I don't want to have my problems being shared on the phone, because it just doesn't give me that connect, that empathy that I'm looking for. And I think we'd love to hear your views around how did you overcome this issue?
Yeah, so firstly a qualifying statement, I don't think we have overcome as yet. It is a challenge, Anuranjita. I don't think there is a very clear answer to this. I think it all depends on how your processes are structured and what kind of experience finally the employees are getting. It's also been one of my experiences that as long as we are able to provide the desired end experience to the employee, up to that point, they are not too much worried about, who's providing that. But the moment there is a lack of empathy, okay, take the example of a help desk. When a person gives a call, and if the person who's on the other end is he or she is not able to actually provide that empathy, of either listening properly to the problem or even before jumping to clarifying, then you have a problem. So was it not there when shared services were not there? It was there. So the fundamental rules don't change. It's all about how do we make this combination of these three agencies, the COE, the shared services and the HR business partner, get to deliver the right end experience to the employee. If they are able to collaborate, do it well, then this question will not be there. But right now it's very much there, and I'll come to this later on also, whether technology could help us to some extent. There are some IT companies, and I am sure Rajesh and even Harish is sitting here, with whom I have been consulting on this subject for some time. Many people who've had experience in the shared services in the IT, they believe that probably this issue was not as much prominent there as probably what we are facing in manufacturing. Manufacturing was totally on the other end, where people were not used to technology. For every damn thing, I want a visiting card. Where is empathy here? Right? I want my visiting card on day one. But I used to go to a person, and the person used to say, okay, welcome, today is the first day. Okay, sure, I'll do that. And here is now an environment where you just click that I've joined today, I need a visiting card, and the visiting card gets delivered on your desk 2 hours later. Now, in which processes there was a personal touch and there was a need for it. So I think it's also evolutionary. People, were they used to technology interface? Those are the things which will actually determine how much is it going to really impact people on this. Very quickly going, I think this is the biggest piece. If we have decided to outsource, as I mentioned right in the beginning, this is not a payroll outsourcing. This is not a bill passing outsourcing. This is a HR shared services. If we decide to outsource, it needs a very intensive collaboration with the service provider. It's not contracting out. It's collaboration. Through and through collaboration, 24/7.
Can I just add a point there?
Yeah.
If you can just go back to the previous slide. I think the entire journey of moving from a transaction to processes to the overall business value creation and the enterprise value chain is something which has got created. And a lot of SLAs which actually gets driven from the HR business partner, which comes from the line to the COEs, to the shared services, the handshake has got to be very, very strong for translating this to an experience. I think that's another stuff which I've seen. SLAs are generally timed out, and in terms of the changing value proposition as based on the business plan, if one does not keep on refining the SLAs as you go through this journey, you get into some kind of a strain. So SLAs, I would say, will need to be kept dynamic, though initially when you start the HR shared services, you will have a lot of teething issues and you will have a lot of leniency as far as SLAs are concerned. And when the process matures, you possibly tighten it a bit. But SLAs will need to be revamped practically every business plan.
Actually, I was in the break, I was asking you, Anuranjita, how many years you've been in city, in the shared services, because that was one thing which people who've been there for 10 years and 15 years, and we have been for 2 years, first thing which I ask whenever I meet them, that how has the journey panned out, and means what we are going through, is it a natural transitionary process, or is it that we started with some very stringent SLAs or not so stringent SLAs, so I think some of the it's a very valid point. How do you take your journey, and how do you keep refining your SLAs? And when I say refining, it's not only changing the standards. I think it's also about what the delivery means. Is it very high experience focused? Is it very high, time focused? Clinical efficiency is more important, or the qualitative experience is more important? Those are the things which I suppose the SLAs would tend to define. What is it that you are actually driving at the end of the day? Not that other things are not important, all being equally important, which is that one thing which really matters to you. multiple agencies. I have not been able to figure out, this, whether the solution is technology or whether the solution is the structure. Organization like ours, and I'll be very candid here, we are a very complex organization. Mahindra and Mahindra, I consider it to be very complex. Multiple agencies, there is administration, there is accounts, within accounts there is personal payments, there is a bill passing section, there is within administration there is a vehicle, there is all, so how the big corporations get organized. And suddenly on a fine morning, just because you decided to get into shared services, why the hell would, everybody change overnight and start abiding by your SLAs? There are reverse SLAs. Okay, and there is a response time which we have committed. And why would they start all aligning to your timelines? And that's been one of the very, very big, I'll not say surprises, but something which we should have been much, much better prepared.
I have one question, and either of you can take it, which is when, I come from the banking industry, and when you look at clients and they do banking on internet and, they use phone banking for doing their transaction. And, we've been in this business for years, and it by and large works fine, and we're making decent money out of this. But when it comes to personal transactions, trying to resolve that on the phone or trying to do it on the internet somehow is yet an evolving concept for them. So there is a behavior pattern when it comes to transacting on your financials, and there's a behavior pattern when it comes to transacting on your self issues within the company. I'd just like to get your thoughts. It's the same individual.
You're opening a can of worms. Have you guys dealt with, without picking up any bank per se, dealt with a telebanker? It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And this is actually, we're not trying to be critical. I think we're not trying to be cynical. The point is, when a large shared services organization is run by large banking captives, what they really do is outsource the entire processes, and they have a set of FAQ which they service to. But many a times the client question is much beyond that, and they need to keep on escalating, keep you on hold for many a times. I think the relatedness between a customer and the tele agent is so wide that it becomes very difficult for the for the customer to cross over. So I think the more and more banking outfits which have understood this and which have built process capabilities in line with the feedback have possibly kept pace, but people are possibly still, at the transaction level and waiting for customers to come back creates a host of issues, and this creates a lot of HR issue. We've heard always, consistently, IT-enabled services and HR shared services, or any shared services for that matter, having the highest amount of turnover. It is just that employees are unable to sustain that kind of a pressure, many a times, both from client and internal to the organization. How many times have we been empathetic towards this? We assume that all of this is outsourced, enough process maturities, FAQs built, you deal with the customer world, insulate us from them. I think so, that's point number one. From an internal organization, it throws a lot of real big challenges in terms of how do you really manage this. You assume that this is an outfit which will self-sustain, will manage on its own, will build maturity. So I guess there's a tipping points for the organization to be dynamic and keep revisiting time and again to ensure that you get into some kind of a maturity over a period of time. No right answer, but I guess we all go through it both as a customer and as an employee.
Rajesha, from a business perspective, typically we would charge for a service. There's a cost to this service, right? So depending on the client relationship, and if you are catering to a high net worth client versus a salaried account client, the cost of service is different and different kind of services provided. I'm wondering, what are your views in this evolving world of shared services where by and large it's a broad brush for all employees?
You kept all difficult questions for this is a real tough one. I don't think we have reached that stage, where we have typically the way banking industry would look at. But there is a point in what you are saying, and not that we have not been hit by that. Even amongst employees, let's be frank, you know, the level of expectation from different segment of employees is quite different. So, and we are a hierarchical society. I don't know when will it go away. We do keep saying, you know, that we treat everybody equal and all are equals, etc. But there is a tacit difference. A senior management team member, relatively, giving a call to the help desk or seeking a service from the shared services versus an entry-level guy, a GET, who joined yesterday, the level of expectation is very different. Probably the way to handle them is also different. So, just picking up from your point, the way banking does, if I am a priority banking customer, then it very conveniently, I am talking about the Citibank because I am also a customer, so it goes to a different person.
We are not going to get into those issues here.
So, and banking has learned it probably the hard way and probably showing us the way. So, they are very differently trained. Very, very differently. And when the call goes to them, oh, sorry sir, you are I see that you are a priority banking customer, so you let me transfer your call. They are very differently trained. Probably answer or solutions lie around that. So going forward, and I don't know whether when we will be able to migrate to that. Right now, we are struggling with the basics. So let me stay on what has been our experience. So now let me share with you some of the whats and hows, and this is straight from the heart and straight from the experience. So maybe relevant to some of you, may not be relevant to many of you, but that's been, I thought it would be useful because we are in the course of doing that. One of the biggest lessons and biggest learnings, not that we didn't do it, but probably what is absolutely essential to be kept in mind is standardization is a prerequisite. If we as an organization, we have a problem on standardizing and we are too much into customizing to different segments of business, different segments of employees, if we have got into too much of customization, we have a problem on hand. There would be service providers who would come and tell you we are geared up to handle that, you know, all that thing, but standardization to the extent possible is a prerequisite for any, for this kind of shared service. The second one is automation. And we keep talking, there's a lot of lip service being paid to HR automation. And I'm very emphatic on this, there's a lot of lip service. There's a large part of HR which is still very manual, has a lot of manual interfaces. And that's where probably this particular shared service is extremely difficult.